My name's Ethan Long. I'm one of the co-founders and brewers here at Rockaway Brewing Company in Long Island City.
Hey all, Amanda here, and welcome to episode 86 of Great Beer Adventure. Today, we are back in New York. On this adventure, I used an amazing app to get from Transmitter Brewing to our next stop. This is not an ad. It was just a huge lifesaver in a new city. If you are headed someplace new, check out City Mapper. It really drains your batteries, but it is super helpful. Let's jump right in and find out more about Rockaway Brewing Company's origin story.
The origin story. Well, it goes back a number of years. We first got our license in 2012 to start serving beer out in Rockaway. We made the company in 2010 as we were avid home brewers and quickly outpacing our ability to make beer in our bungalows in Rockaway, hence the name Rockaway Brewing Company. We quickly outgrew our bungalow, and then when we filed with the TTB, we needed a physical location, which is where you're standing here, is an old meatpacking plant. So it had the terracotta floors and drains and other things that kind of helped us get the pilot project off the ground. So in 2010 and 11, we were making this space into just a tiny 2-barrel system, a nano brewery. But the idea that we wanted New York City to start making its own beer. So we did it on a very small scale. A couple of years of doing that out of this space, we had, at that point, growlers going out our front door here with a little line and a little tiny growler station there. And then we had, a line out the door getting growlers, a few kegs going to the boardwalk in Rockaway, and a couple bars and restaurants. But we couldn't make enough beer. And we were, in here all night, every night, making as much beer as possible. We took that business model. We got a loan, and we took the spaces over, 2 spaces next to us, which is still smaller than we wanted to be, but we put a 5-barrel system with 10 and 15-barrel fermenters. So it gave us, tenfold production from where we were. So for the last few years, I'd say since 2014, we've had the new system up and running. And since then, we've now have a space in Rockaway that we are looking to build the next iteration of the brewery. So we have some work on that space and are designing and planning out, I guess it'd be phase 3. And one nice thing in New York is the change of the craft beer law allowed us to have our tasting room. So now where you're standing, this is the tasting room that used to be where all brew production happened. You brought up the now recording sign, but under the now recording sign, we can go into the other room and all our brew operations happen there. So we're, currently canning, and we have enough production to be in a lot more presence in New York City.
Now on to a couple of beers that they make.
The original is our ESB that we've had since we were first starting the company, so that one's been kind of one of our mainstays. We do that one in the can as well. Hawaiian Pizza is our rotating IPA that we've been doing for the last number of months now. It's that says V4 up there, so we're just the last of V4s going out the door this week, or next week, I should say, and we'll probably do V5 coming up. So that one's kind of a fun rotating series IPA. 1875 is our pale ale. It's kind of a hoppy pale ale that everyone thinks 1875 is a year based on beer, but it was actually the year that the trains were connected in Rockaway, that finally the full loop of the Rockaway Peninsula was connected, usually lost on most people. Some of the other ones down are more just fun names that we have for some of the autocorrect came because we were, as a collective group, trying to figure out a name for the beer, and as the text started going around, I started noticing all the funny names that were coming from autocorrect, and so it made sense to, as an export stout, some of the words that came up were hilarious. So, in the brew house, I've Robbie and Ray and Zavi and collective, and then even some of the tasting room staff will often shoot names around or design different beers. I think the Holified Gangsta Lean one of Ray's names that he came up, but it was also because we were using whole melon as a hop, and that led to the conversation to head into that. The bottom of the list there is our Nitro Black Gold Stout. That one actually goes out in the world, and I've been really happy with that one as a local nitro beer. I've been really proud of. Now and again, we do the High Plains Drifter. Not a Beastie Boys reference, but more of a reggae reference from an album. But we do that one in bottles now and again throughout the year, and it's aged in bourbon barrels and kind of a wee heavy Scottish ale.
Let's find out a bit more about where you can find Rockaway's beers.
Different bars and restaurants, a lot of it right out of the tasting room, places like Citi Field or other venues, but it's still a pretty small run on our canning. We're starting to do more specialty releases. We focused on our one can for a while we were doing our other production, but coming up we'll start doing monthly releases of some of our limited items that we do. I mean, we typically have 8 to 9 beers on the board. 3 of them are main beers that go out to bars and restaurants, and then if you come to the tasting room, you can kind of taste the stuff we're experimenting with and cycling through. And we'll start to can some of those on a more regular basis in this coming year.
What feeling do you want people to have when they come and visit you?
It's been evolving. I mean, we've always had a beach theme, but we're not all about the beach. I mean, a lot of it's about just being a very local brand that is producing interesting beer. So we've been excited to just follow the project. I mean, part of Rockaway's has had a renaissance. We've been out there since way before Sandy, but even since Sandy, it's really had a rebirth. And so part of that's just exploring where this excitement about, being in New York City comes from. And so we're riding that wave, not to keep the beach pun going. We try to keep it simple. I mean, that's one of my things is always not being too extravagant. I mean, this being an old meatpacking plant, it was kind of had an interesting, strange vibe to it as well. But I mean, you can still see we still have the terracotta floors with the drains in them. We've kept the old sliding stainless doors. There's a few of them around. This entire space was refrigerated, so for the longest time there was no heat. So it's a very, very just kind of raw industrial space. I mean, we stand in contrast to across the street where the zoning changed. We've got glass condos and this whole other world that used not to exist. I mean, there used to be a Pepsi plant across the street where this neighborhood was manufacturing. So we had Pepsi, we had bacon being made here. I mean, I always tell the story where years ago I had an art studio around the corner, and I used to see these guys in sweatshirts zipped up to their neck and rubber boots standing outside, kind of, it'd be 105 degrees outside, and they'd be, in jackets and boots. I was like, it's very strange. And I feel like I've now carried the torch over when I walk out from, on a brew day to go to the corner to get some lunch or something, and I'm wearing rubber boots and a sweatshirt. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Something happened here. But it is interesting to kind of, we've kept this kind of, tried to maintain its roots of a kind of manufacturing and commercial spot. So, and a lot of the stuff in the space I like to design. So like the stools and tap handles and other elements come from my creative background as a sculptor. So you'll see like on the wall, negative patterns from some of the designs or, other random objects.
And as always, we certainly must know Ethan's first beer memory.
Okay, I won't go to the Michelob that my babysitters made me drink when I was 11. So that one stuck for a long time. 2, there was kind of, I've always bring back when Red Hook was making ESB on the West Coast before they came to New Hampshire. It was a very different beer when I was in college in San Francisco. We used to go to a little dive bar in the Mission, and that was my go-to drink was Red Hook ESB, which has now evolved, become much sweeter. But at the time, when it first was coming out in California in the late 80s, early 90s, it was a different beer. So that one stuck with me for a long time, and followed up by Bonington's cream ale. I always love a nitro beer. So those 2 things are on my board. I have the stout, which is a nitro, and a nod to my early Red Hook days with ESB. So when I first came to New York, after been in California, my pit stop in Madison kind of led me to homebrewing. As I was homebrewing in New York, my girlfriend and now wife was a chef in kitchens. So my conversation with food became the beer. And so I know some of my first and early recipes were stouts. And then in that conversation of food, it evolved over years to kind of enjoying making beer. And I think to answer the question of where was that aha moment, why we were going to make beer in New York, we were on, my partner Marcus and I were on a road trip with our families. I had driven out across the country, and we were visiting family in California, where we're both from. And then we started heading up the coast, up into Oregon and Washington. And during that time, we were like, wow, we're getting all this great local homebrew, or not even homebrew, just great local microbreweries. And we're like, there's something missing in New York. So why don't we get back to New York? We get our licenses and start selling, even if it's on a small scale. And that was kind of the moment when we realized, if some place like Portland will have 60 breweries for 500,000 people, New York City was definitely missing out on beer that was made locally. So even if it wasn't in great volume, our goal was make beer locally.
Thank you so very much to Ethan and Rockaway Brewing for chatting with me on today's episode. And a giant thank you to you all. What an amazing adventure we are on. Remember to hit up greatbeeradventure.com/podcast to see Justin's latest write-up. Until next time, get out there and try something new. Chat soon, friends. If you all, our fabulous co-adventurers, would like to support the show, check out our Patreon page. For less than the cost of a beer, you can show us some love. Go to greatbeeradventure.com/support. If you want to see even more from our adventures, follow us on Instagram @GreatBeerAdventure. And be sure to subscribe to the show. That way, you won't miss a thing. Great Beer Adventure is part of the Great Pint Society. Cheers.